Come into the circle of love and justice. Come into the community of mercy, holiness, and health. Come, and you shall know peace and joy. As is our custom, if you'd like to come and light a candle for whatever personal or private reason, please do so while we sit in stillness listening to the prelude. Please stand in body or spirit for our chalice lighting and spoken affirmation. Flame of fire, spark of the universe that warmed our ancestral hearth, agent of life and death, symbol of truth and freedom. We strive to understand ourselves and our earthly home. Join me as together we remind ourselves of the affirmation that is the cornerstone of our free faith tradition. These words, should you need them, are in the morning program. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth and freedom, and to help one another.
Today is our fourth Sunday, continuing our look at Great Peacemakers, true stories from around the world. Our Peace Sunday candidates this morning are people we aren't very familiar with. Coleman McCarthy, who advocates teaching peace, and Oscar Arias, who believes us refers to all of mankind. We hope you enjoy learning about these leaders this morning. Much of the dialogue about the leaders is taken directly from the book. The Great Lesson by Olympia Brown. Olympia Brown reminds us in this great lesson, we can never make the world safe by fighting. Every nation must learn that people of all nations are children of God and must share the wealth of the world. You may say, this is impractical. This is far away. It can never be accomplished, but it is the work we are appointed to do. Somehow, sometime, somewhere, we must teach this great lesson. Join me in a minute of silence to contemplate these words.
Make channels for the streams of love where they may broadly run, and love has overflowing streams to fill them everyone. But if at any time we seize such channels to provide, the very founts of love for us will soon be parched and dried. For we must share if we would keep this gift all else above. We cease to give, we cease to have, such is the law of love.
Why do we not have peace? Because we do not teach peace, says Coleman McCarthy. Since 1982, this journalist and educator has taught peace courses to more than 6,000 students in high schools, colleges, universities, and prisons. Based on his classroom experience, McCarthy is convinced that peacemaking is indeed a skill that can be taught and that students are eager to learn. Coleman McCarthy was born in 1938 in Old Brookville, New York. He first learned of nonviolence from his father, a country lawyer and World War I veteran. He was very much opposed to war, but didn't preach it, McCarthy recalled. Nonviolence incubated in the back of McCarthy's mind while he finished high school and entered Spring Hill College in Mobile, Alabama. The relaxed English major quipped, "There are 18 reasons I went to Spring Hill College. They had a wonderful golf course. I was pretty much a golf bum in school. I read more greens than I read books." After graduation, on McCarthy's trip back to New York, he stumbled upon a Trappist monastery in Georgia that piqued his interest. He decided to stay for a while, and 1 week turned into 5 years. McCarthy did not join the order, but he worked as a laborer, rising at 2 each morning to milk cows, shovel manure, and work the fields. He devoted his spare time to reading hundreds of books, including those by many peacemakers, and writing extensively in his journal. Ready to make his passion his profession, McCarthy bid the monks farewell and set out as a freelance writer. In one of his first articles, McCarthy criticized the director of the Peace Corps, at the time Sergeant Shriver. Instead of getting angry, Shriver invited McCarthy to join his speechwriting staff in Washington, D.C. There, McCarthy met a fellow staff member named Maverine Deegan. Smitten, McCarthy proposed marriage the next day, but she convinced him they should wait at least a month. The following month, they did get married and later had 3 sons. In time, McCarthy became a respected and award-winning columnist for the Washington Post, contributing 2 columns per week to his newspaper's editorial page. McCarthy saw great meaning in his job, saying, "I am a journalist for one reason, to use whatever skills I have to ease suffering in the world." Tackling war, military spending, the death penalty, and other controversial issues, McCarthy consistently took a nonviolent stance, often bringing intense reactions from readers. McCarthy joked, "I get a stack of mail this high from people who call me ignorant, and then I read my negative email." A common reaction, McCarthy explained, was, "Everybody's always, yeah, what if someone breaks into your house with a gun and wants to shoot your family? What do you do then?" So you can create scenarios where nonviolence clearly probably won't work. But meanwhile, there are 40,000 people a month who are dying in wars around the world. And rarely is this ethic questioned. So I question it. Eventually, McCarthy's column became syndicated, and by 1981 was appearing in 73 newspapers. The next year, McCarthy's career took on a new dimension. After speaking at his son's high school, McCarthy was invited to teach a course on writing. He replied, "I'd rather teach peace." The school officials agreed, and McCarthy began teaching the course one afternoon a week as a volunteer teacher. When asked why he wanted to teach peace, he responded, "Why are we violent but not illiterate? Because we are taught to read. Unless we teach our children peace, someone else will teach them violence." Focusing on nonviolent leaders and their philosophies, the course became a popular repeat offering, prompting McCarthy to introduce it at another high school as well. Why did the students take the class? Reasons ranged from wanting to develop communication skills to wanting to address grave concerns about humankind. One student shared, "I am taking this course because I am ashamed of humanity. We seem to be focused on the sole purpose of killing and destroying all that is great and beautiful, including ourselves. I hope that I can become a better person and make a difference in the world." Although the course was popular among students, McCarthy faced objections from some teachers who suggested, as we currently hear now, that he offer what they call balance in his courses, that he educates students in the other side of the peace argument. McCarthy responded, "Students come into my classes already well educated, often overeducated in the ethic of violence. The educators, the nation's long-term cultural faculty, political leaders who fund wars and send young to fight them, judges and juries who dispatch people to death row, filmmakers who script gunplay movies and cartoons, toy manufacturers marketing action games, parents in war zones, homes where verbal or physical abuse is common, high school history texts that tell about Calamity Jane, but not Jane Addams, Daniel Boone, but not Daniel Berrigan. I can't in conscience teach the other side. Students have already been saturated with it." Soon, educators began seeking McCarthy's advice on how to start similar courses, so he and his wife converted a room in their home into the Center for Teaching Peace, a nonprofit organization that helps schools implement peace study programs. Meanwhile, McCarthy continued writing his award-winning column until 1997, when it was canceled due to declining syndication. While to many this would be a monumental setback in one's life's plan, to McCarthy it was an opportunity to dedicate himself fully to peace education. Shortly thereafter, McCarthy created 2 textbooks, Solutions to Violence and Strength Through Peace, trained additional volunteers to lead nonviolence courses, and continued teaching peace. McCarthy's teaching methods are unconventional. On the first day of class, he captures the student attention by holding up a $100 bill and offering it to anyone who I can identify a short list of people. When he names famous generals or war heroes, students shout out the answers. But when he names peace heroes, the room goes silent. No one has ever won the money. Believing in desire-based, not fear-based learning, McCarthy does not give tests or grades. However, for many students, his is the most demanding course that they have ever taken because it shakes the foundations of their worldview. Additionally, through atypical field trips, the course puts students face-to-face with people who challenge their stereotypes, including homeless individuals and condemned prisoners on death row. Furthermore, in McCarthy's classroom, one thing is strictly forbidden: questions. Don't ask questions. Question the answers. What answers? The ones that say the answer is violence. Disarmingly warm-hearted, the personable teacher engages even the most difficult students, reaching out to them and being generally interested in their opinions. McCarthy asks students to thoroughly consider, not necessarily accept, the ideas presented in the course, stating, I'm in the information, not the conversion business. In fact, McCarthy takes more joy in one student vigorously arguing with him than a room full of pupils absent-mindedly agreeing with him. McCarthy recalls some students saying, "But in the real world, nonviolence won't work and hasn't worked. Look what happened," they say, "to Jesus, to Gandhi, King, and a lot of other pacifists." He responds, "I answer the only honest reply available. Nonviolence is a risky philosophy to live by. It is no guarantee of safety. All that can be said of it, it is less a failure than violence." Frequently, students ask McCarthy what he believes should have been done about Adolf Hitler. McCarthy responds, "Organize in 1926, when he first ran for office. You can't stop him in 1940, when he has the guns out. You have to put the fire out in its little lick of flame. It's easy to go back and make that judgment, but Hitlerism is still out there, so we've got to do something now to prevent governments from solving conflicts through killing people. That's what Gandhi said. Don't agonize over what's happened. Organize over what will be happening." After the 1999 shooting at Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado, McCarthy was saddened by society's general response to such tragedies. He stated, "When school shootings occur and the inevitable call goes out to do something, dollars are spent on metal detectors, hallway police, ID badges for kids, not textbooks or nonviolence or salaries for potential peace studies teachers." Fortunately, this was not the case everywhere, as 2 high schools, 3 universities, University of Maryland, American University, and Georgetown University Law School, and a Maryland prison had been offering McCarthy's courses in peace since the mid-1990s. At the prison, inmates often reflected that if they had studied nonviolence earlier in their lives, they probably would not have ended up in jail. Encouragingly, by 2003, more than 70 U.S. colleges and universities were offering degrees in peace studies, up from just 1 in 1970. Oftentimes, when a person recalls their school years, one teacher or professor stands out as having an especially positive impact on them. As McCarthy discovered in letters written to him from many of his students, he is that special teacher. Clearly, McCarthy's students have learned much from him. But what has he learned from them? His answer: "I have learned 2 realities from having taught some 6,000 students. First, nonviolence is teachable. And second, the young are hungry to learn the skills." His classes normally conclude, "You've got homework tonight. Go tell somebody you love them." I know that sounds ridiculously small, almost inconsequential, given the magnitude of the problems going on. But there are so many unloved people out there, and if you could say a kind word to them, it would be a big step forward. He was not talking about season's greetings, but everyday recognition that peace comes from love. McCarthy adds, "And lest I happen to forget while celebrating the birth of Christ, remember, Jesus was a victim of capital punishment too." We will now see a few of Coleman McCarthy's more famous quotes, followed by a song.
We are teaching peace by what we do and what we say. So take my hand and come along. It's time to sing the world a brand new song. So sing it loud and sing it clear. All together now so everyone can hear. Teaching peace all the world around. You and me, every city, every town. One by one in our work and in our play. We are teaching peace by what we do and what we say. We are teaching peace by what we do and what we say. Sound off. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. So take my hand and come along. It's time to sing the world a brand new song. So sing it loud and sing it clear. All together now so everyone can hear. Teaching peace all the world around. You and me, every city, every town. One by one in our work and in our play. We are teaching peace by what we do and what we say. We are teaching peace by what we do and what we say.
The story of Dr. Oscar Arias is that of a remarkable man and a remarkable country. As president of military-free Costa Rica, Arias extended his nation's peace to its neighbors, brokering a historic treaty that restored peace to war-torn Central America in the 1980s. Today, this dignified Nobel laureate encourages other leaders to choose human lives instead of weapons and works toward the day when the word us refers to all of humankind. Oscar Arias Sanchez was born in San Jose, Costa Rica in 1940 to a family of wealthy coffee growers. When they asked the quiet, serious boy what he wanted to be when he grew up, to their surprise, he answered, president. In 1948, when Arias was 8 years old, Costa Rica experienced a profound transformation. The country's incumbent president refused to relinquish power to the newly elected president, prompting a civil war led by Social Democrat General Jose Figueres Ferrer, who emerged triumphant. After his victory, though, Figueres did something unheard of. He became the first victorious general to abolish his own army. Why take this unprecedented step? Figueres replied simply, why not? Citizens celebrated as military funding was rerouted to infrastructure, education, and healthcare, and as military buildings became cultural centers and schools. Watching Costa Rica become the only sizable nation in the world without a military or military base, and seeing his country's quality of life improve as a result, Arias later beamed, mine is an unarmed people. Our children go with books under their arms, not rifles on their shoulders. While studying at Boston University, Arias wrote to U.S. President John F. Kennedy expressing his views on the U.S. Central American relations. Surprisingly, Kennedy, one of his greatest heroes, responded by inviting Arias to meet him at his vacation home. Arias later received his doctorate in political science from the University of Essex in England. Upon returning to Costa Rica, Arias met Figueres, then the president of Costa Rica, who was so impressed with Arias's ideas that he appointed him Minister of Planning and Economic Policy. Around this time, Arias met Margarita Penon Góngora. Although her friends labeled Arias that lunatic who wants to become president, she believed in him. They married and had 2 children. Meanwhile, Arias's career skyrocketed. Elected as a member of Congress and as Secretary General of the National Libertarian Party, Arias decided to pursue his lifelong dream and run for president. Whereas his opponent wanted to revive the military, Arias ran as the peace candidate and won the 1986 election, making him, at age 45, Costa Rica's youngest head of state. Upon his inauguration, Arias faced significant challenges as Central America was embroiled in what has been called one of the most deadly, most complicated, and most hopeless situations in the world. Civil wars raged throughout the region, fueled by military support from the U.S. and the Soviet Union, claiming more than 100,000 lives in Guatemala alone. Dictators and rebels fought bloody battle throughout Central America. Death squads kidnapped and killed people who protested such basic things as poor living conditions in El Salvador, and Sandinistas and Contras clashed in Nicaragua. Hoping to prevent the violence from spreading into Costa Rica, on his first day in office, Arias met with leaders of 9 Latin American nations, calling for an alliance of democracy and freedom. Boldly, Arias ordered U.S. military advisors and Contras to leave Costa Rica and announced that Costa Rican soil could not be used for any military purpose. In reaction, the U.S. withdrew tens of millions of dollars in aid from Costa Rica. Nonetheless, Arias would not give in, revealing, "I was told by some U.S. officials, very straightforwardly, that Costa Rica was not a viable country because we had no armed forces. My reply was nonsense." Believing the solution for ending the conflict would come, not from the U.S. or the Soviet Union, but from Central America itself, Arias set out to do what many people thought was impossible: convince all leaders of all war-torn Central American nations to meet face-to-face and discuss peace. On a humid summer day in 1987, Arias and the presidents of Nicaragua, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras convened in Guatemala. After 2 days of intense negotiations, the presidents signed what became an immediate guerrilla war ceasefire, amnesty for all political prisoners, free elections, and respect for human rights. For his efforts, Arias received the 1987 Nobel Peace Prize. He humbly accepted it on behalf of the people of Costa Rica and the other Central American presidents. After some initial progress, it looked as if that peace plan might fail. Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega refused to share power with the Contras, and the other presidents could not convince their army generals to abide by the peace plan. In efforts to overcome this hurdle, the presidents reconvened, and Arias gave a moving discourse about democracy, and surprisingly, President Ortega announced that he would allow open democratic elections in Nicaragua. Encouraged by this unexpected move, the other leaders devised a way to disband the Contra army and reintegrate its members into society. As a result, U.S. Congress voted to send $2 billion in non-military aid to help the nations rebuild. With the peace plan saved, Arias refocused on his own country. During his term as president, Costa Rica maintained its status as having the highest standard of living in the region. The gross national product grew an average of 5% each year, and unemployment dropped to 3.4%, the lowest in the hemisphere. Arias said, "If you want to bring tourism, who is going to come to a country where there's a civil war?" Under his leadership, Costa Rica balanced prosperity with a sense of cooperation, as Arias sought an economy in which men cooperate in a spirit of solidarity, not an economy in which they compete to their own extinction. To Arias, this spirit of solidarity encompassed not only his own countrymen, but all of all of humanity, as he proclaimed, "The future of the world will be magnificent when the word us refers invariably to all of humankind." Arias completed his first term in office in 1990, and at the time there was no provision for re-election in Costa Rican law. After leaving office, he dedicated himself to campaigning for demilitarization throughout the world, collaborating with the Arias Foundation for Peace and Human Progress, the nonprofit organization he had founded, with a monetary portion of this Nobel Peace Prize. During this campaign, Arias highlighted connections between military spending and poverty. He declared, "Ultimately, I want to tell people that we can end poverty. At the present time, the clear way to do it is by cutting military spending and redirecting funds to human development. The poor of the world are crying out for schools and doctors, not guns and generals." At least two nations have followed Costa Rica's example. In 1994, Panama constitutionally abolished its military, giving Costa Rica and Panama what has been deemed the most secure border in the world. Then in 1995, due in large part to the influence of Arias, Haitian President Aristide disbanded his nation's armed forces as well. Further, Arias helped create an international agreement called the Framework Convention on International Arms Transfer. Supported by 19 Nobel Peace Prize laureates and several humanitarian organizations, the convention urged countries to allow the sale of arms only when buyers met strict standards, such as opposing terrorism, respecting human rights, and conducting human development programs. When detractors argued that if one nation did not sell arms to disqualified buyers, another nation would, Arias countered that, well, this was precisely why globally respected standards were needed. Others objected that the convention opposed the law of supply and demand. Arias responded, "We must not enrich ourselves through the commerce of death. We cannot let the free market rule the international arms trade. Too often, this trade is a friend of dictators and an enemy of the people." In October of 2006, the United Nations voted to begin work on a comprehensive binding arms trade treaty, bringing Arias' dream much closer to being a reality. Wishing to serve his country again as head of state, Arias ran for president in 2006 after a constitutional reform was enacted to permit re-election to non-consecutive terms. He won, albeit by a small margin, because of his views on a controversial trade agreement, becoming the first Nobel Prize winner in history to be re-elected as a nation's president. Ever the peacemaker, Arias said, "I will have to pay attention to half the population that didn't vote for me. I am a conciliatory, humble listener." If the past is any indication of the future, then, as Arias' campaign message stated, for Costa Rica, the best days are to come. Likewise, if more world leaders take Dr. Oscar Arias' ideas to heart, perhaps someday this message will also ring true for other nations. Then more children will carry books instead of guns. More leaders will talk at the bargaining table instead of fighting on the battlefield. And the word us will refer to all of humankind. We will now see a few more famous quotes from Oscar Arias, followed by a song.
Let there be an offering to sustain and strengthen this place, which is sacred to so many of us, a community of memory and hope, for we are now the keepers of the dream. The bowl awaits, or you may donate online. I didn't mention before, and we do have some new time visitors. Please don't worry about any of that. Okay. I invite you to stand in body or spirit for the benediction and extinguishing the chalice. The peace that passes understanding, the peace of God, which the world can neither give nor take away, be among us and abide in our hearts. Please join me in saying the words to extinguish our chalice. Should you need them, they are in the morning program. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go in peace.